In this video, you're going to learn how to review the effectiveness of that new song that you just introduced to your church. And in the process, I'm going to share with you 5 ways that you can determine whether a song worked or not. Coming up. Hey everybody, Spencer here from leadingworshipwell.com, your daily dose of practical worship leading tips. If you want to find those tips, head over to Instagram or Facebook at Leading Worship Well, where I'm posting new worship leading tips every single day, or you can just head to my website, leadingworshipwell.com. But you're here on YouTube, so go ahead, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on future worship leading videos just like this. Maybe hit the like button while you're down there, and let's get into it, because today we're talking all about how to review the effectiveness of a worship song. If you don't know, we've been working through this series about introducing new songs to your church, and we've covered a lot so far. We've covered how to pick good worship songs for your church. We've covered what to say before introducing the song. We even talked about how to introduce the songs before your church even shows up to the church building on Sunday. So if you are interested in any of that, go ahead and click right here. That's the playlist. We covered a bunch so far. This is the very last video in the series, because now that we've introduced a new song, that's not the end of the process. You don't just throw the song into your regular rotation and hope for the best. No, now you actually review it and see if it worked. And I'm going to share with you these 5 ways to determine whether that new song that you picked out was effective or not. So let's get into it. The first one is you got to give it 4 chances before you review it. You can't just review a song instantly. You've got to give it time. You've got to do it at least 4 times. I recommend maybe even a couple more than that. But why do you need to give it 4 chances? Well, the truth is it takes time for people to learn a song. People don't learn a song instantly. They've got to show up to church and hear it, and then hear it again, and then hear it again, and then hear it again and again. Just think about you as the worship leader, as the one who picked the song. How many times did you listen to it before you actually led it on Sunday? Hopefully by the time you lead it on Sunday, you know it really well, right? How long did it take for you to get there? You probably listened to it 3 or 4 times before you determined that you liked the song, and then maybe you listened to it one more time to think about, is this a song that would work in my church? And then you went through the process of physically or musically learning the song, and then you introduced it to your church. So you've listened to this song like 8 times by the time your church has heard it once. So keep that in mind, because your church has only heard the song for the first time whenever you introduce it for the first time. They aren't listening to this song outside of Sunday unless you utilized one of the things that I talked about in this video right here. But for the majority of the people who come to your church, this will be the first time that they've heard it. And the truth is, they're not going to be able to sing it. They aren't going to be able to sing along the very first time, no matter how good of a teacher you are, because teaching, or learning, I should say, takes time. They have to hear it over and over again, and I think it takes probably about 4 times of them hearing it to actually be able to sing along. And that's why we don't want to evaluate the song too soon. And then you couple that with the fact that the average churchgoer only attends church once a month. And think about how you introduce a new song. Maybe you do it for 4 weeks in a row. If you introduced a new song on week 1 and did it for 4 weeks in a row, most of the people in your church will still have only heard the song once. That's pretty crazy to think about, but they will have only heard it once. So you've got to kind of sift through those people who are, I guess, average church attenders who only come once a month. And I don't like to evaluate the new song based on them. You know, those regulars that come to your church, like the people who are there every single week. I like to look at them whenever I'm evaluating a new song, because if I've done it 4 weeks in a row, they've been there for 4 weeks in a row, and they're able, or they should be able, to sing along with it now. So base it off of them, but still lead with your whole church in mind, because if you look at those people who show up every Sunday and they've heard it 4 times, then whenever these people who only come once a month have been there for 4 months, hopefully they've heard it 4 times. So the key is don't judge a song too soon. You got to give it time. People have to have time to learn it. Now, I want to talk about something here that I haven't covered in these videos so far in this series, and that is how to introduce the song. Like, practically, how many songs should you do it, or how many weeks should you do the song in a row? And this is sort of the schedule that I recommend. There's some room to tweak this a little bit, but this is what I usually do. So I'll start off whenever I introduce a new song. I'll do it 3 weeks on. So I'll do 3 weeks in a row. Week 1, week 2, week 3, we're doing that new song every single Sunday. And it might not be in the same slot of the service every Sunday, but it will be in the service somewhere, because that reinforces them learning it. And then from there, I take a week off. And that's just because, or I don't take a week off, that'd be nice, but I leave the song out for a week, because I don't like to do songs over and over and over again. Whenever I pick songs for my church, I usually do like 2 weeks in a row at the most. I'll do the same songs. But if it's a new song, I'll do 3, because I want to get it in there one extra time so that people have a chance to learn it. And then after that, I'll throw it back in one more week, put it in the set list, and hopefully by then people are actually knowing the song pretty well at that point. But I still don't evaluate yet, because after you do that, you want to throw it into the regular rotation, or at least that's what we're going to call it. We want to test it out in that regular rotation slot. So you might do it 3 weeks, take a week off, then do the new song on that 4th week, and then from there just implement it like you would any other song, whatever that system looks like in your church. And then after that initial introduction phase of 3 weeks on, 1 week off, 1 week on, and then you do it again, that's when you want to evaluate it, because hopefully by that time people have had a chance to actually learn it. And if you judge it too soon, if you evaluate the song too soon, you're not going to have a very good evaluation, because people are still in the process of learning it. Like, they won't, if you're judging it by whether they're singing along or whether they're engaging it on the first Sunday, they probably won't. They'll just be staring at the screen reading the lyrics, because they're still trying to learn the song. So don't judge the song too soon. Give it at least 4 chances before you review. On to the next one. Now that we have introduced the song effectively and done it 4 weeks in a row and then one more time before we actually review it, now we want to get into the actual evaluation of the song. And the first thing that you want to ask is simply, are people singing along? You are, after all, a musical worship leader. That's your job. We talked about that in a video a while ago about what your job as a worship leader is, and you are the musical worship leader. That is the responsibility that you've been given. So part of that is that you want to pick songs that people can sing along with, because you are leading people musically. And yes, it's worship. Music is a form of worship. But if we want them to worship musically, they've got to be able to sing along with the song. So you want to ask the question, are people singing along? Now, there's sort of a warning that comes with that, because maybe your church doesn't usually sing along to songs as much as you'd like. So if that's the case, and you've got to know the level of your church, like where do they usually sing a song? Evaluate the song compared to how your church usually sings other songs. So I like to think of it this way. I take maybe like my top 2 or 3 songs in my church that people sing out, that just like blow up whenever we do them. For my church, those songs are probably In Christ Alone. What else? Draw Near by Passion. That's not a super mainstream song, but it works really well in my church. And maybe there's another one in there. I can't think of it right now. But I take those songs and think, like, what is the singing level there? Like, that is what I consider in my church, like the songs that the people sing out the most. Oh, the other one is Great Are You, Lord. And they sing these songs out like no other song in my church. So those become the benchmark for singability for my church. Now, in your context, it's probably different songs that work in your church that people sing out like no other song. So use those songs, think about how people sing those songs, and then compare this new song to how they sing that song. And what this does whenever you ask the question, are people singing along, is this tests the singability of the song. And we talked about this earlier in the series about picking good congregational worship songs. One of those aspects was singability, and that means, number one, range. You want to have a good range in the song. It's not too crazy that people can't sing along with it. Number two, it needs to have a simple rhythm, or at least a rhythm that people can sing along with. If it's too crazy and syncopated and all over the place, people aren't going to be able to sing along with it. And then you also want to make sure that the song structure fits the culture of your church, I guess I would say, because some churches, you can take them anywhere, right? You can do any song in any order and they will be with you. But then there's other churches, they just want verse 1, chorus, verse 2, chorus, bridge, chorus. And not that you can't lead them beyond that, not that that's a bad thing either, but you got to know your church. And so know the song structure. I think song structure is an often overlooked aspect of singability, because if people are confused about where the song is going, then it makes it hard for them to sing along with you. So you take this song, and you've already gone through this process of looking at these three things before you picked the song, because we want to pick good congregational worship songs. But the truth is, sometimes you do the proper planning ahead of time, and you find out that you were wrong. Sometimes you test the song for singability, and you look at the range and you make sure that's good, and you look at the rhythm and you think, okay, this is going to work for my church, and you look at the song structure and you're like, this is going to work for my church, and then you do it 4 times and another time, because we're giving them time to learn it, and people still aren't responding to it because it's not what you thought it was. So don't be too proud to admit that you were wrong. In that, you want to check, are people singing along? On to number 3. The next question you want to ask is, does this allow people to respond to what's going on in their lives? We talked about this before, about how you should have a reason for introducing a new song. And one of those reasons is not because we haven't introduced a new song in a while. It's that you want to pick a song that allows the people of your church to respond to what's going on in their lives. So you should have a reason to introduce a new song, just like I talked about. You want them to be able to respond to whatever's happening in their lives. You look at the lives of the people in your congregation, you recognize a theme and say, man, this song would really help people respond to that in this season. And now we're evaluating whether that was true or not, because the truth is, sometimes you do the proper planning ahead of time and you find out you were wrong. I just said that in the last one. I'll say it again because it's true for this point as well. Sometimes you do a song that you think is going to kill, and people are going to be all over it because it's exactly what they need to say, and you find out you were wrong. And the truth is, people's lives change, right? Maybe you took a little bit too long to implement the song, and what was true a month ago whenever you started planning the song isn't true anymore. Like, they aren't going through the same thing. And obviously these truths of God are eternal and timeless, but sometimes people need to respond to specific truths in specific seasons, and maybe you missed that season. So review whether it allows people to respond to what's going on in their lives, and think about, okay, here's the content of the song. This is the truth that's being highlighted, and now I'm looking, now that I've introduced the song to people, what's going on in their lives now? Is it still the same? Do they still need to respond to that specific truth? That's what you want to be asking in this step. So those are the questions you ask. Now here are a couple ways that you can not just be in the process by yourself. And the first is to get feedback from your worship team, or even your pastor or other leadership in your church. But you don't have to do this process alone. You don't have to just sit down in a room and think about it by yourself. You can incorporate other people, and that's actually part of being the church, is working with other people and equipping them to serve. So whenever you bring your worship team into the equation, and they aren't on paid staff, or maybe you're not on paid staff either, but they aren't necessarily leaders of the team, but you're bringing them into this conversation of evaluating whether songs work or not, you're raising them up as worship leaders. So the other thing that this does is you can utilize your team as an extra set of eyes. Ask them what they saw on Sunday whenever you did this new song. Ask them whether they thought it worked or not, whatever that means in your context. Ask them just if they think it was a good choice or not. And you can ask them these questions and get a secondary opinion. And sometimes they're going to be like, yeah, I thought this song was amazing. I thought the people responded to it very well, and those were your thoughts as well, and now you've received confirmation. So utilize your team as an extra set of eyes. Also, utilize your team as a general voice for your church. The people in your team are part of your church. So if you ask them for their opinion, you're asking your church for their opinion as well. They're sort of like a microcosm of the church in general. And you have probably a deeper relationship with these people on your worship team because you've spent a lot of time practicing with them. So just walk up to them and ask them, what did you think of that new song? Or do it, like, take 5-10 minutes during a worship rehearsal and just talk about the new song that you've been doing for the past month and get their thoughts on it. Now, the other part of this, though, is that you want to be having regular conversations around the topic of congregational worship songs. If you want to get somebody's opinion on your worship team, you want to make sure that they understand what a congregational worship song is, because people don't always understand that. We're going to see that in the next point here, but people don't always understand what a congregational worship song is. So you want to make sure that the criteria that you are evaluating a song is the same that your worship team is evaluating the song with as well. Last one, get feedback from your church. And this is the last step. Why is it the last step? Because it's kind of dangerous. The truth is, everyone has a different opinion. You're not going to please everyone with your song choice in the church, and not to mention the people of your church don't always understand the difference between a personal worship song and a congregational worship song. Have you ever had one of those moments where somebody comes up to you after a service on Sunday and they recommend a song and say, I think this song would be amazing, I'd love to hear it on Sunday? And you go and listen to the song and you're like, this is not even a congregational worship song. This is barely even a worship song. I've had that a couple times. And there's no doubt that those songs may have led the person in worship in their personal worship time, but they wouldn't work in a congregational setting. And that's what people don't understand. So that's why you have to be careful here. You don't just want people's opinions. You've got to ask them and then kind of sift through the information that they give you and view it through the criteria that you are evaluating the song with. Not do they like the song? Is it their favorite song ever? But, is it singable? Is it full of truth? These things that we've talked about before. So how do you get that feedback? Well, you simply ask them. We don't need to overcomplicate the process. If you want feedback from the people of your church, go up to someone in your church and ask them, hey, we've been doing this new song for like 4 weeks now, and we're trying to get some feedback from the people of the church, and we just want to know what you thought about it. And they'll give you their thoughts, and just thank them and say, okay, and then sift through that information, compare it to what other people thought, and then you've got your answer of how it's working in your church after you've done all this other stuff. Now, the final warning in this whole process is that you should not be too proud to admit that a song didn't work. Just because you're evaluating the song doesn't mean that every single time you introduce a new song, it's going to become your church's new favorite song. You've got to be humble enough to recognize, hey, maybe this song didn't work as well as I thought it was going to be. And we've got to start thinking of worship leading in the long term. Sometimes it involves testing things out. And that's okay if those new things fail because you tested them out. And maybe that's a song that you introduced that you maybe even thought it was going to be amazing and it just fell flat. I know that before. I've hung on to songs before way too long that I thought were amazing, and I thought that they should work in my church. And I went through that initial phase, and I evaluated it, and I was like, man, that wasn't the song that I thought, or it wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. But I picked it, so it must be good, and I'm going to hold on to it forever. Don't be like that. If it doesn't work, maybe give it a couple more chances and review the effectiveness. Maybe people still haven't learned it yet. But if you've done it for 10 times and people still aren't responding, maybe it's time to consider that maybe it just didn't work in your church, and that's okay, and you move on to the next song. That's why we get to constantly introduce new songs. It's okay for a song not to work. Don't be too proud to admit that a song didn't work. Hey, before you go, I want to share with you a free audio training that I put together. It's called 5 Tips to Instantly Improve Your Worship Leading. In this training, I cover 5 simple tips that will instantly improve your worship leading. They're really simple things. You just got to know them and implement them into your leading, and it will improve your worship leading. They're really simple. You just got to know them, make the conscious effort to implement them. Hey, thanks so much for joining me in this series, introducing new songs in worship. I feel like we covered a lot. I'm glad that you went on the journey with me. If you didn't catch the rest of the series, go check it out. And I'll catch you in the next one. Keep leading well, guys. See ya.